You can find the pattern on my blog and the printable version in my Ravelry or Lovecraft shops. So for this project I used Brava worsted, V-crochet Brava worsted in almond and dove heather. For this demonstration I'll be using paint box Simply Chunky. So I'll use the silver as color B, as dove heather, and I use the orange as almond. So the basic of this blanket is that we are making squares using intarsia. So while for lots of my projects I use stranded color work, because this is a baby blanket, I decided to use intarsia to completely avoid the floats. What this means that we have to work from several balls of yarn, or we will have to use bobbins. So what I prefer to do, work from the outside and inside of the ball of yarn, or split the ball of yarn in half, or in thirds, or in how many parts you need, and work from in that way. So for this demonstration, I'm not going to be working the whole blanket and casting on 102 stitches. I'll be using a smaller version or miniature version of only several stitch pattern repeats. So instead of the squares as per pattern, which are 70 stitches wide and 14 rows long, I'll be using squares which are 5 stitches wide and 4 rows long. So let's get right into it. So we will start working with color B, and as per pattern you will work 102 stitches, but for this small demonstration I'll be casting on 20. So we will start with a slip knot and then chain, so when we chain we yarn over the hook and pull through. That's chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. We start the first row, which is also known as foundation row, working into the back bumps of your chain stitches. So we will be changing color on this foundation row. So so far we've done the chains with color B, and now we will go into the back bumps of the chains. We insert the hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, working the foundation row or the forward pass of the foundation row, and we will repeat this in the color B for another 3 back bumps. That's 1, 2, and 3. We will then get our color A. So we drop B, we'll get color A, and we'll continue working 5 back bumps. So as I mentioned before, in the pattern you have 17 stitches. You have 17 stitches per square, so I'm counting 5, but once you start following the pattern you will notice that you will need to count out 17 stitches altogether. So because we are changing color and we don't want gaps between our squares to start creating in these sections where we change from one color to another, we need to make sure that the yarn crosses over the other strand of yarn to enclose the gap. Okay, so that's what we need to do on the first stitch. Then we go into the next one, yarn over, pull up a loop, and you continue for the number of stitches per the second square. So for me it's 5 stitches, so I've got 2 more to do, like so. Now I'm going to go back to a color B, but this time I'm not picking up the color B that is attached to my project already, because we are working in tarsia rather than stranded color work. I'm going to get another end, so this can be another bobbin, or you're working from inside and outside of your yarn ball, however you prefer. And then place the loop on the hook, yarn over, pull through. Again, because we are changing colors, we want to cross the yarn one over the other, and I'm going to work 4 more stitches on my mini swatch, 3, 4 and 5. Okay, now again I'm going to be changing to my color A, so I'm going to get another end of color A, and as you notice you've got 5 more bumps left. So you place the loop on the hook, don't forget to, again in this case, cross over, and then continue working until the end. Okay, so as you notice, this is the foundation of our stitch pattern. So this is the foundation of your first section of your squares. We worked the forward pass. Now we've attached, if you worked from the start all the way until the end according to the pattern, then you will have more squares or more foundation of your squares. I have 4, 2 in each color. And now we will work return pass, where we change color in the same place as on the forward pass. So return pass is worked as yarn over, pull through 1. This is also known as chain 1. This will be our end stitch, and then yarn over, pull through 2, and we repeat yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of our row. So now we need to pay attention where the second stitch from the left hand side is in the other color, because this is where we need to change colors. And again, we just need to make sure that we get the correct end. Okay, so this is the end we need to get, and then you yarn over, pull through 2. If you notice, you will know that I crossed over the yarn at the back, again to make sure that there are no gaps in the section where we change color. So I'm going to yarn over, pull through 2 all the way up to this section. So again, the second stitch in from the left is in the other color, so I'm going to drop this silver. I'm going to then pick up the other color, making sure that I cross over, and yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, repeat this again. I drop the color, cross over, and continue working until the beginning. Depending on how you are working with your yarn, whether these are bobbins or balls, the back inevitably gets a little bit tangled, so you will need to adjust it as you work. However, the good news is that this is not going to happen throughout the whole project. because you will work your squares and then you cut off the ends, and then you will be reattaching the ends. So I'm going to show you what I mean just in a moment. So this was the foundation row. This will be the first row of your squares. So as I mentioned, my squares will be 5 times 4, so 5 stitches times 4 rows. Your squares will be 17 times 14. So now we are going to work row number 2, and this will be the repeat for this set of squares. So we are going to work Tunisian simple stitches all the way across, changing colors. So Tunisian simple stitches are worked by inserting the hook from right to left under the front vertical bar, yarn over and pull up a loop. That's one Tunisian simple. So we are going to work this until we get to the section where we need to change color, like so. Then we drop the color, pick up the other, making sure that we are crossing over, and we will work, for me, 5 Tunisian simple stitches. For you it will be 17, like so. So what I would like to draw your attention to is these sections where we change color. We need to make sure that as we are changing colors, we don't pull on the yarn too hard to bring these stitches too close, because what this would do, this would distort the overall stitch pattern and the squares wouldn't look even. So it takes a little bit of practice to know exactly how much to pull. If you keep them just tiny little bit loose, it's not as a big of problem, because what you can do, you can here pull at the back to tighten up a little bit. If the gap is too big, you can tighten it up a little bit, bring them closer together. However, if you bring them too close together and then you continue working with the yarn, it's really hard to fix that and make the gap a little bit wider to match the space between the stitches, or the gauge as for the rest of the project. So as you start working the project, it will take a little bit of practice, but as you kind of get the muscle memory during the working the blanket, you will see that it will become easier and easier as you progress through the project. Okay, so now I'm again changing color, working in color B here, changing back to the orange, and I'm continuing working. So as you notice now here, the first and last square, they actually have instructions adjusted to the fact that the first stitch is the edge stitch, so you don't work the edge stitch because it's the last loop which is left on the hook from the previous row. So in the instruction you will see that for the first square we actually instruct you to work one less stitch. However, if you add the edge stitch, it will work out to be 17, and the same is true for the end of the project. So for my instruction here for this last square, the instructions would be 4 Tunisian simple stitches and then the end stitch. So the end stitch is the 5th stitch per square. Okay, so but as you can see, it all works out just fine, because now we have 5 stitches per square. So if I wrote the instruction as work 5 stitches and then the end stitch, and the same is for the beginning square, you will see that the first and the last square would be wider and would be different to the rest of the project. So because I try to maintain the pattern even throughout, that's why the instructions seem to have 1 less stitch, but actually it's 5, adding the edge stitches. Right, so now for row number 2, you will also work standard return pass, changing colors as per the forward pass. So we yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. I will now repeat row number 2 2 more times. In the pattern, you work 12 more rows to have a total of 14 rows. So I'll meet you once I've completed 2 more rows for the second set of squares. Okay, now I'm back. So I've done 2 more rows and I'm on the last yarn over and pull through 2 of my return pass of the row number 4. So that for you it would be row number 14. So when I look at the back now, I can cut the yarn from these sections because I'm going to be reattaching the yarn in the opposite, on the opposite squares. So I can cut these because now I will need to start, I will need to have the orange, which is the color A, at the beginning. So I'm going to find one of the ends. I'll make a small loop like so, place it on the hook and pull through 2. Okay, this brings it to the beginning and I can start working the next set of squares from here. So as you can see, now the first square, well, before it was silver, now the first square will be in the orange, and this is how we will alternate the squares. Okay, so I'm going to now work 4 Tunisian simple stitches, 1 2 3 and 4. Now I need to reattach the silver there. Again, attaching the color. Don't forget to cross the yarns at the back so we don't get gaps in our blanket. Okay, 4 more stitches, 3 4. Now I go to another section where I need to change color. Like so, crossing the yarn at the back, and working 4 more stitches. I'm now on my last square. This will be in silver. Crossing over and securing the yarn like so. So 1 2 3 and then the end stitch like so. Again, we will continue working standard return pass as previously. So that's the easy part for the project. Where you only need to worry about making sure that you change the color in the right place on the return pass, and the rest is relatively easy. Okay, so we are almost at the end of the return pass. Okay, so now when you look at the back, you see that because you cut the yarn and then you reattached it, you will have some ends to weave in. However, that's the balance between having the loose floats and having some extra ends to weave in the back of your project. So some crocheters prefer to weave in the ends as they go. Some prefer to do it all at the end once they finish the project. Again, it's down to your preference, and I usually strive to weave in my ends as I go, and I end up doing them all at the same time at the end of the project. So here we go, no one is perfect. So you will then continue working your squares, and I'm going to add 3 more rows to make this second section of squares even, and I'll meet you at the end when I show you how to bind off your project. So I'm now at the end of the return pass on the last square. So here I have orange, but I'll need to get back to silver because I'm going to be binding off in silver to be able to match the edge at the bottom of the project. So I'm going to again cut the yarn at the back, and I will reattach my yarn by placing the loop on the hook and pulling through the last 2 stitches in silver. Now we are going to be working Tunisian simple stitch bind off. So we will go into the next stitch as for Tunisian simple stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we pull through the stitch that is already on the hook. And we will repeat this for every stitch of the row, all the way to the end, and we will do that for the edge stitch as well. Okay, working the edge stitch or the end stitch. We'll cut the yarn and pull through. Okay, so this is my miniature sample of the Elsam blanket. So as you can see, the bottom and the top are matching. Aside from the lot of ends that we need to weave in, you can see that there are no extra floats because we changed the colors along the lines where we were changing the colors between the squares. So once we weave all the ends in, there will be no floats, which can be a danger to those little fingers